The Age of Giants. According to ancient narrations, their height reached 70 meters. The earth was harsh, life was wild, and only the strong survived. And in that age, the first prophet born on earth came, Sheeth Alayhissalam. He was not only a guide, he knew alchemy. He worked with metals, transformed them, and built humanity's first weapons of defense, because in front of him was the people of Kabil, a wild community with no limits, lost in Zina and entertainment. But what truly made him strong was not his weapons. It was the laduni knowledge he received from Adam alayhissalam. He could feel what was unseen, he could read signs about the future, and he spoke directly with angels. The greatest trust also passed through him. The Noor of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was part of that chain of light, and that light passed through the forehead of Sheeth alayhi salam. Special knowledge written into human history comes from his time. That is why his name lives not only in Islam, but also in different civilizations. Some describe him as a prophet, some as a wise man. You are watching Religious Story TV. We continue our Prophet series. To not miss it, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and write in the comments which country you are watching from. If you are ready, let's begin. Forget everything for a moment. The history you know, the books you read, the timelines you learned, and ask yourself this question. At the very beginning of humanity, in those early ages when the world was still forming, what kind of beings were people? Were they like us today? The answer, no, not really. There were giants. These people were stronger and used to harsher conditions than us. They were taller and much more powerful. In Lebanon, in the north of the Bekaa Valley, there is a small village. Its name is Nabi Chit. It means the village of Prophet Sheyth. And there is a tomb that has been visited for centuries. This is not an ordinary tomb. It is about 60 to 70 meters long. 70 meters? A human grave. Compare this size. Today, an average human grave is around 2 meters. So that tomb in Lebanon is about 35 times longer than a normal grave. For centuries, people looked at this tomb and asked the same question. What kind of human could this huge grave belong to? Mythology and folk beliefs always gave the same answer: giants. But the truth may be more interesting than mythology. In the earliest periods of human history, environmental conditions were very different from today. The atmosphere was different. There were changes in gravity. The magnetic field was stronger than today. And most importantly, the people of that time did not have a weakened genetic structure like today. Their genetic pool was still fresh. The human body was still at full capacity. People living in mountain conditions were also shaped by a different kind of pressure. Harsh climate, rough land, wild animals, heavy physical work, all of this pushed the body. As it was pushed, it became stronger. As it became stronger, it grew. Bones became thicker, muscles became harder, height increased. The physical difference between the descendants of Qabil living in the plains and the community of Sheyth alayhissalam living in the mountains is also mentioned in narrations. The men of the mountains were much stronger and more imposing. The mountain makes a person like this. It does not soften. It hardens, and over time, as generations passed and conditions changed, human height decreased. Lifespan became shorter, strength weakened. Today, an average human would look weak compared to those first generations. The age of giants has passed, but its traces still remain. And just like their height, the lifespans of these giant people were also very long. It is narrated that Sheyth alayhissalam lived for 912 years. In some sources, this number reaches 950. For us, this is almost impossible to understand. Today, a person living to 100 is considered rare. But at that time, it was normal. Adam alayhissalam lived close to 1,000 years. Enush, Kinan, Melail, all of them walked on this earth for hundreds of years. Long life was not just a privilege, it was a natural reality of that time. And this period had other interesting mysteries, for example, alchemy. In traditional narrations and in the tradition of hidden knowledge in Islam, an interesting claim is repeated. Sheyth Alayhissalam was the first human to understand the secrets of metals. He knew how to separate gold from silver. He understood how metals mix with each other. He understood the language of elements, meaning the inner order of matter. In the medieval Islamic world, scholars who studied Havas and alchemy would place the name of Sheyth Alayhissalam at the very beginning when discussing the origin of these sciences. They believed that the 50 pages revealed to him contained not only religious rulings, but also deep knowledge about the nature of matter and the universe. This knowledge did not disappear. It was passed from generation to generation, sometimes openly, sometimes in secret. And centuries later, when Jabir bin Hayyan systematized chemistry as a science during the golden age of Islamic civilization, he also knew that these roots went back much further. Every science has a beginning. According to narrations, the beginning of the science of matter was in that burning fire where metal was shaped by the hands of Sheyth Alayhissalam. But why and how did Prophet Sheyth have this knowledge? To answer this question, we need to look at the time before Sheyth. The journey of humanity began a very long time ago with the first humans on earth, Hawa and Adam Alayhissalam, and the generations coming from them continued to grow. Hawa gave birth 20 times, and in each birth she brought twins into the world. But between these births, a tragedy happened that filled Adam Alayhissalam and Hawa with deep sorrow. A conflict broke out between their two sons, Habil and Qabil. Habil and Qabil were born together with their twin sisters. When the twins reached adulthood, by the command of Allah, Adam Alayhissalam married Habil to Qabil's twin sister, and Qabil to Habil's twin sister. But this did not please Qabil, because he thought his own twin sister was more beautiful and wanted to marry her. Jealousy slowly grew inside him. Even though his father Adam Alayhissalam conveyed the command of Allah, Qabil did not want to accept this decision. Over time, the anger he felt toward his brother Habil led him to commit the first murder in human history. Qabil trapped his brother Habil in a lonely place and struck him, taking his life. This was the first bloodshed on earth by humankind. The death of Habil caused an indescribable pain for Adam Alayhissalam and Hawa. After Habil's death, they grieved for many years until one day Allah sent them a gift of comfort. And right in the middle of this darkness, something unexpected happened. Our mother, Hawa, became pregnant again. But this time, everything was different. Before, in every birth, twins would be born. One male, one female. This was the first system Allah placed for the growth of humanity. But this time, Allah willed something different. Only one child was born, a boy, alone, without a twin. This itself was a sign. This was not an ordinary birth. It was as if Allah was declaring from the very moment of birth that this child was not ordinary. When Adam Alayhissalam held the newborn in his arms, he felt something. A divine calm filled his heart. He looked at the baby's face and remembered Habil. But this time, not with pain, but with hope. Allah had informed him, this child would take the place of Habil, and he gave him a name, Sheyth. In Hebrew and Arabic it had the same meaning, gift of Allah. Think about it. In the deepest wound, Allah sent a gift. It was as if he was saying, I know what you lost, and I have never forgotten you. That night, a light shone on the forehead of our mother Hawa. When the birth happened, that light left her and moved to the forehead of the newborn baby. This light was not unfamiliar. It had existed since the very first moment of creation, passed from prophet to prophet, and would finally reach Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is how Sheyth Alayhissalam came into the world, at a time when a father's tears had not yet dried, to fill the emptiness in a mother's heart, and as a light in one of the darkest periods of humanity. All 40 children of Adam Alayhissalam were different from each other. In strength, intelligence, courage, and manners, each one stood out in a different way. But there was one among them who carried a difference that could not be described. Something felt with the heart. That was Sheyth Alayhissalam. His face looked like his father's, almost like a mirror, because Adam Alayhissalam was created in paradise, and the mark of that first creation appeared again on the face of Sheyth. And Adam Alayhissalam had no beard because he was created in paradise. According to Tafsir Tabari, there was no beard or mustache in paradise. The first human on earth to grow a beard was Sheyth Alayhissalam. This was not only a physical difference, it was a sign of maturity, transformation, and a new era. Sheyth Alayhissalam was the first prophet born on earth, raised on earth, and living the reality of the earth directly. But this was not the main difference. While others were speaking, he was listening. While they moved with ambition, he chose to share. When anger rose, he searched for calm. In disagreement, he looked for justice. And most importantly, he lived every sajda with deep feeling. Adam Alayhissalam saw this with the spiritual vision given by Allah. One day he called him. He looked at him for a long time, and then he spoke as if handing over a heavy trust. "My son, this trust is now yours. Allah has chosen you as a prophet." Sheyth Alayhissalam lowered his head. "This is only possible with the help of my Rabb." This was not a coincidence. That light was already with him from birth. And so, the second prophet in human history was chosen. And he also became the first prophet born on earth. And his father began to pass special knowledge and secrets to him. At night, when the stars appeared, father and son would sit side by side. Adam Alayhissalam would speak. Sheyth Alayhissalam would listen for hours, sometimes until morning. This was not ordinary teaching. It was a transfer that could not be fully taught in any school or contained in any book. Because what Adam Alayhissalam told were things he had lived. He had seen them with his eyes. He had touched them with his hands. He had felt them with his heart. He would speak about paradise, the trees there, the light there, the peace there. While listening, Sheyth Alayhissalam would narrow his eyes as if trying to see that light himself. And sometimes Adam Alayhissalam's voice would become soft while speaking, because paradise was both his most beautiful memory and his deepest longing. Then he would speak about Shaitan. "My son, this is our clear enemy. He was arrogant and refused to make sajda to us. He swore to remove us from paradise. And he is loyal to that promise. Know his voice, know his ways, because before he attacks, he whispers. And a whisper is more dangerous than a sword. Your brother Qabil followed him, and I fear many more will follow. Always seek refuge in Allah from him. Only with the power of Allah can you defeat him and your own nafs." Sheyth Alayhissalam carved these words into his heart. Adam Alayhissalam also taught him the secrets of the night. He explained what changes when the sun sets and darkness covers the world. How different beings worship Allah at different hours of the night. How angels descend to the earth, and how the stars guide during those times. "My son, do not see the night only as a time to sleep. The night whispers the wisdom of your Rabb, but only those who listen carefully can hear it." It is narrated that Sheyth Alayhissalam did not learn only worship. He also learned astronomy, medicine, mathematics, agriculture, and architecture. It is even said that Allah informed him about the flood of Noor in the future. His name appears even in ancient Greece, in Egypt, in esoteric teachings, and in some hidden symbolisms. The Sabians call him Shetl in their language and accept him as one of the greatest prophets. The transition from a nomadic and scattered life to an organized and settled civilization would happen with Sheyth Alayhissalam. Adam Alayhissalam also taught him how to convey words, how to speak to people, how to protect the weak, how to keep justice standing. Because he knew one day he would not be there, and when that day came, whether what he taught would survive or disappear depended only on this son. Those night conversations between father and son were the longest and quietest will in human history. But somewhere, evil was growing. The wicked would become stronger, and when the time came, they would begin to act. Kabil, the first killer on earth, had fled after killing Habil. His brother's blood was on his hands. Did he feel shame or regret? It is unknown, but he could not stay where he was. He could not look into the eyes of Adam Alayhissalam. In those eyes, he saw both Habil and himself. Both were unbearable. He went far away, to plains, valleys, open lands, away from the mountains, to places where his father's voice could not reach. And there he settled. He had children. He had grandchildren. Generations passed. The descendants of Qabil grew in the plains, spread and multiplied. But Qabil did not teach them something important. He did not teach them about Allah. He did not teach them about accountability. He did not teach them about Habil. He only knew how to take control of the world, and that is what he taught. On the other side, in the mountains, a completely different community was living. The descendants of Habil. People gathered under the leadership of Sheyth Alayhissalam, worshipping, protecting each other. Their lives were simple, hard, the harsh climate of the mountains, rocky paths, limited resources. But there was peace in their hearts. The day began with the name of Allah, and the night ended with gratitude. Adam Alayhissalam had seen this separation, and long before he had set a rule, clear, firm, unquestioned. The descendants of Habil would not mix with the descendants of Kabil. This rule sounded simple, but behind it was deep wisdom. In the line of Kabil, Allah had been forgotten. To get close to them meant to get close to that forgetting. Faith does not always disappear through big attacks. Sometimes it fades through small contact, slowly, without being noticed. The two communities were no longer only physically separate, but also spiritually in different worlds. Sheyth Alayhissalam saw these two worlds, and he knew their world had to be protected. For a long time, the people of Sheyth Alayhissalam gave importance to worship and protected their faith. They lived in the mountains, a simple but pure life. Sometimes they looked from afar at the wealth, entertainment, and opportunities growing among the descendants of Qabil in the plains. But when they looked, they returned, because their prophet had taught them, brightness is not proof of truth. But how long could this rule be kept? Generations were passing, new people were growing, and each new generation grew not only with rules, but with questions. Why can we not mix? What is there in those people? Are they not our relatives too? Questions were the first seeds of fitna. Those seeds had not yet touched the soil, but the wind was blowing, and Shaitan was waiting exactly for this, because he did not forget the promise he made to Allah. I will lead them astray. And this rule was a door for him, a door not yet opened, but very soon someone would approach that door. Time was now moving slowly. Adam Alayhissalam had grown old, the years had weakened him, but his heart was still alive, and that heart was feeling the approaching moment. One day he called his children. His voice was calm, but his words were heavy. I am getting close to meeting my Rabb. At that moment, the world became silent. But inside Adam Alayhissalam, there was another longing. He wanted to return to paradise to be with Allah. One day he said, I want to eat from the fruits of paradise. This was not just a request. This was the whisper of a heart longing for its true home. His children set out to find those fruits, but on the way, there were those waiting for them, beings that looked like strangers but were actually angels. In their hands were shrouds and the scent of paradise. They said to them, "Return, your father's time has ended." When the children returned, everything had changed. The angels had come. Our mother Hawa felt the weight of that moment. But Adam Alayhissalam said, "Leave me alone with my Rabb." Then that moment came. The soul of the first father of humanity was taken from his body. For the first time, the world said farewell to a prophet, and for the first time, a funeral took place. The angels washed him, shrouded him, buried him, and Sheyth alayhissalam watched everything. This was not just a farewell. This was a teaching, the first moment that taught humanity how to face death. Then the greatest moment came. The angels turned to him, "Step forward." And Sheyth alayhissalam led the funeral prayer of his own father. This was another sign of prophethood. Now the trust was upon him. After Adam alayhissalam, the world became truly alone for the first time. People were no longer beside a prophet receiving direct revelation. The seeing eye was gone. The hearing ear had become silent. Truth would now be carried through narration. And this was very dangerous because words change as they pass from person to person. They are reduced, they are added to, and over time, the truth can be distorted. At this point, Allah did not leave humanity without guidance. He gave Sheyth alayhissalam a great trust, 50 pages. This was not ordinary knowledge. This was the first written revelation in human history. Now, truth would be protected not only through speech, but also through writing. What was inside these pages? Not only worship, life itself. How a society should be governed, how justice should be established, how disagreements between people should be resolved. This was very important. Because humanity was now meeting an organized system for the first time. Sheyth alayhissalam did not only read these pages, he lived them, and he made people live by them. When he spoke, people did not only listen, they understood. But far away, in the valleys, something else was growing. As knowledge was being written down, sin was quietly taking root. And very soon, these two would meet. And Shaitan made his first great plan. He took the form of a human, a handsome young man, someone who inspired trust, someone who raised no suspicion, and he mixed among the people living in the valley. He went to a blacksmith. "Take me as an apprentice," he said, and he began to work there. Days passed. No one suspected him because he was patient. Then he did something very small, but this small thing changed human history. He took iron, he shaped it, and he made a sound. A different sound, a sound never heard before. People turned, they came closer, they became curious. Then he did something else. He made a pipe, he blew into it, another sound. Then the first flute, the first rhythm, the first melody. People were amazed. This was not just a sound, this touched the heart. And for the first time they began to forget themselves. This was the plan of Shaitan, not all at once, step by step, to make them forget worship without them realizing it. And that day, humanity learned something new. But this knowledge did not bring them closer to Allah. It slowly took them away. Of course, Islamic scholars discuss this thousands of years later, because in the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, music and Zina are mentioned together. Some scholars said that music that does not attach a person to the world and does not make them forget the hereafter can be halal. Among them is the Hanafi school, the first of the 4 major madhabs. Some scholars, however, considered all types of music to be haram. We made a video about this topic. Its title is, "Music is not haram, but how?" Those who want can watch it to learn more. If we return to that time, at the beginning, these sounds were only curiosity. What is this sound? People gathered. They listened, and for the first time, a different feeling formed in their hearts. This feeling was neither fear nor peace. It was something that distracted. Shaitan, in human form, continued to play the instruments he made. People wanted to listen again and again because these sounds were pulling them in. Over time, they did not only listen, they began to move. Their bodies followed the rhythm. This was something never experienced before. And then one day they decided, today we will gather. Today we will have fun. The first collective entertainment began. The first gathering night started. People came, they listened, they laughed, and in that moment no one realized something was decreasing. Worship began to be delayed. Dhikr became less. Remembering became harder because the heart was now filled with something else. This was not just music. This was the slow erasing of memory. Shaitan was not rushing. He did not teach sin all at once. First, he made them get used to it. Then, he made it normal. Then, he made it necessary. And people reached a point where they could not leave it. For them, these sounds were no longer ordinary. It became part of life. But no one noticed this. These sounds were taking them away from Allah, slowly, silently, in a way that was hard to return from. At first, that sound was only coming from far away. The people of the mountains would sometimes stop at night and listen. That different rhythm carried by the wind created a question in their hearts. What is this? The boundary set by Sheyth Alayhissalam was still there, but curiosity spreads faster than prohibition. Some of the young people began to whisper to each other, "What if we just go and look, then come back? We will only watch from a distance." This thought looked small, but in reality, it was the key to the door. One day, a group of young people came down from the mountains. Silently, without telling anyone, they reached the edge of the valley. And for the first time, they saw that world. There was music, there was a crowd, and there was something they had never seen before. Women were decorated. They were showing themselves to attract attention. This was something new. For the first time, the human body was used as a tool of attraction. The first tabarruj, the first art of adornment. The young men stopped. They stared. Because this was completely different from the world they knew. They only wanted to look. But the eyes bring the heart with them. They took one step forward, then another step, and without realizing, they entered. The people in the valley noticed them, and this time, something else happened. The women decorated themselves even more. They came closer, because in front of them were men they had never seen before. Different, clean, strong. This meeting was not a coincidence. This was the second stage of Shaitan's plan. And that day, the forbidden door was opened, silently, but in a way that would be hard to return from. At the beginning, it was only a look. Then it became a step. And that step became the beginning of a path with no easy return. The young people from the mountains may not have stayed in the valley, but what they saw there returned with them, into their minds, into their hearts, into their desires. "There is something there," they said. "It cannot be explained. It must be experienced." And so, the first invitation began. Those who went told others. Those who told increased. Curiosity was contagious. Each time more people went down. Each time they came closer. And after a point, just looking was no longer enough. The music was playing, people were enjoying, the women were decorated, and this environment was awakening feelings inside people. This was exactly what Shaitan wanted. Because he knew sin does not begin all at once. It begins step by step. First the eyes, then the heart, then the body, and in the end, it happened. For the first time in human history, haram relationships began. First in the community of Qabil, and then in the community of Habil and Sheyth Alayhissalam. When morning came, some returned to the mountains, but none of them were the same. Their eyes had changed. Their hearts had become heavy. Worship felt difficult. Dhikr no longer gave the same sweetness, because when a person tastes something, it becomes hard to return to the old state. Sheyth Alayhissalam saw this. He warned them again and again, but some hearts had already begun to slip. And now, this was not just an individual mistake. This was the beginning of a change in a whole community. The young people who went down to Kabil wanted to spread the weight of their sins and make their own people get used to it. They spoke about the music, they spoke about the fire, they spoke about the women, and each time they told it, they decorated it more. They made it bigger. For those who listened, this was enough. They could not resist. The second week, a larger group went down. The third week, even more. In the plains, the gatherings grew every week. Iblis taught the women more. How to walk, how to look, how to soften their voices. He also taught them how to prepare the first drink made from fruit juices, a drink that relaxed the body, clouded the mind, and reduced shame. And so, alcohol was born in those nights. Music, dance, adornment, and alcohol. The four came together. And together, they slowly removed the human mind, willpower, and sense of shame. The young people coming from the mountains began to stay there. 1 night, 2 nights, then more. They spoke with the women. They became closer. Boundaries disappeared. First a look, then contact, then more. Sheyth Alayhissalam knelt at the top of the mountain. He cried. The cry of a prophet is silent, but deep. He was losing his people. And the most painful part was this: the young people were choosing it. He prayed to Allah, "My Rabb, my people have fallen into the trap of Shaitan. Forgive them, protect us from this fitna." The mercy of Allah is endless, but He gave humans free will. And once that will is used, returning becomes difficult. Some returned, but most could not. One morning, there was a different feeling in the mountains. Tense, heavy, as if even nature knew something was coming. News was arriving from the plains. The descendants of Qabil had grown. Over generations, they had increased, spread, and become stronger. And with that strength, something new had grown inside them: pride. They were no longer only corrupting among themselves. They were looking at the mountain, and they were looking at the people of the mountain with anger. Why anger? Because the people of the mountain were judging them, maybe not with words, but with their existence, with their simple lives, with their pure hearts, with their connection to Allah. And a person hates a mirror that reflects their ugliness. A group from the descendants of Kabil began to move. They climbed toward the mountain. They had weapons, stones, sticks, sharp pieces of iron. Their intention was clear. They would either make the people of the mountain join them or destroy them. When Sheyth Alayhissalam heard the news, this may have been what he expected, or maybe not. But it would be wrong to say he was unprepared, because a prophet is never truly unprepared. Sheyth Alayhissalam made a decision. He would not run, he would not surrender, he would defend his people. According to narrations, Sheyth Alayhissalam was the first prophet to use a sword. When you think about this, it creates a strange feeling, because until that time, prophethood was lived through calling, teaching, and patience, through words, through example. But now, words were not enough. There was no one on the other side who would listen. Sheyth Alayhissalam took up the sword, and the first armed defense in human history began. This was not a war for land. It was for faith, for the purity of the generation, for the protection of the trust of Allah. While fighting, there was no anger on his face, no hatred, only determination, cold, deep, unshakable determination. With the permission of Allah, the attack of the descendants of Qabil was pushed back. The mountain was protected, the people were protected, the trust was protected. But this victory did not bring lasting peace. It could not. because below, the descendants of Kabil were still there. They were growing, they were becoming stronger. Sheyth Alayhissalam put down his sword and returned to his people. He treated the wounded, he gave rest to the tired, he comforted the fearful. Because a prophet is not only a leader on the battlefield, the real leadership begins after the battle. That night, fires were lit on the mountain. People sat together. Sheyth Alayhissalam spoke, "Do not forget this day. Allah protected us. But the protection of Allah comes through our own will. As long as we stay on the mountain, as long as we protect the trust, Allah will be with us." That night, the mountain was silent. But within that silence, Sheyth Alayhissalam knew. His life was coming to an end. His time was near. And before he left, the most important task was still in front of him, to pass on the trust. 912 years. Think about this number. Today, a human lives 70, 80, maybe 100 years. Sheyth Alayhissalam lived more than 10 times that. He saw generations. He saw the children of his children's children. He personally witnessed how humanity changed, how it grew, how it went astray, and how it held on. He spent every year of that long life for the trust on his shoulders. He did not live to live. He lived to pass on. He did not build himself. He built the truth. But now his body had begun to speak. His back had bent. His voice was no longer as strong. His steps had slowed. And one morning when he opened his eyes, there was a familiar feeling in his heart. His time was coming. Adam Alayhissalam had felt the same, and he had told this feeling to his son. Now Sheyth Alayhissalam recognized it. This was not only death, it was the silent sign that meeting his Rabb was near. He called his children, but not all of them, only Enush, just as Adam Alayhissalam had called only him. This tradition was passed like this. Prophethood was not given to a crowd, it was entrusted to a chosen heart. Enush sat next to his father. The eyes of the old prophet were still shining. That light had not faded. It had been carried for 912 years without breaking. Sheyth Alayhissalam spoke. His voice was soft, but every word was clear. "My son, what Adam Alayhissalam gave to me, I now give to you. Protect these pages, keep these teachings alive, and never become one with the descendants of Qabil, because that mixture will be the end of the truth." Enush cried. Sheyth Alayhissalam did not cry, because he had already accepted this moment. A long life teaches a person about death, and the one who knows death does not fear it. He prepares for it. Sheyth Alayhissalam handed over the pages he received from Adam Alayhissalam. He handed over the 50 pages revealed to him, and he whispered into his son's ear the deep knowledge that is kept only in the chests of prophets, the special names, the hidden truths, the secrets of the universe. Then he turned to his people and spoke for the last time. "O people, I am leaving this world, but what I leave behind will remain. What Adam Alayhissalam gave to me, I have given to you. You must pass this to your children. Do not break this chain, because when this chain is broken, a person remains in darkness, and a person in darkness runs toward every light he sees. Every sin is a path that can lead to kufr. When you stay away from sin, you protect your iman. Even if you fall into sin, make tawbah immediately and follow it with worship and sadaqah. There is no God but Allah." And Sheyth Alayhissalam gave his final breath. A deep sorrow covered the mountain, but there was also a strange peace, because he was gone, but what he left remained. Enush buried him, according to narrations, in Mecca at the foot of Mount Abu Kubais, next to his father and mother. After him came Enush, then Kinan, then Mehlail, then Yared. Each one carried the trust they received from the one before. The truth did not change, only the voices changed. The same call was repeated in different languages, and soon one of the brightest links in that chain would come, Idris Alayhissalam. He would perfect the writing that Sheyth Alayhissalam began. He would deepen the knowledge of the heavens that Sheyth Alayhissalam taught. Sheyth Alayhissalam was gone, but the mark of that quiet, humble prophet on the top of the mountain remained in the heart of humanity without being erased. We will make our video about Idris Alayhissalam when this video reaches 5,000 likes. And if you subscribe to the channel, you will not miss that video. Today, thousands of years have passed. Mountains have changed, valleys have changed, the language of people has changed, their clothing has changed, the cities they live in have changed, but the strategy of Iblis has not changed, and the weak points of humans have not changed. The story of Sheyth Alayhissalam is not a tale left in the past. This story is still alive today. Now you will listen to the lessons from the story of Sheyth Alayhissalam that speak to today. First lesson: the greatest danger comes from within. The armies of Qabil did not first climb the mountain. Swords were not drawn at the beginning. A great war was not the first step. First, music was played. First, curiosity was created. First, boundaries were slowly removed. Faith is often lost in the same way, not through a big attack, but through small compromises. Just a little more, and a person does not realize what they have lost. The extra time spent looking at a screen today is time taken from prayer. A habit that looks innocent is a fire that slowly cools the heart. Second lesson: knowledge is a trust, not something to hide. Sheyth Alayhissalam received 50 pages, but he did not hide them. He did not lock them away. He taught every part of them to people, because the nature of knowledge is to be shared. Hidden knowledge fades, shared knowledge lives. Third lesson: your environment shapes your destiny. Sheyth Alayhissalam warned his people, do not mix with the descendants of Kabil. This was not a claim of superiority, it was a call to protect value. Look at the people around you today. Do they bring you closer to Allah or take you away? When different values come together, most of the time the higher one is pulled down. Fourth lesson: forgetting is the greatest enemy. Sheyth Alayhissalam told the same message again and again, without getting tired, without stopping, as if telling it for the first time every time, because humans forget. Even what they know, especially if they do not live it. When was the last time you truly thought about Allah? When was the last time you took accountability seriously? Fifth lesson: the most valuable inheritance is faith. You can leave a house, it can be destroyed. You can leave wealth, it can be finished. You can leave money, it disappears. But if you leave a heart that knows Allah, that heart keeps you alive even after you are gone. Every dua coming from that heart becomes a provision that reaches you. Sixth lesson: being chosen is not a privilege, it is a responsibility. Sheyth Alayhissalam was chosen, but this did not make his life easier. It increased his burden. For 912 years he carried that responsibility. He never left it. You have also been chosen for things in your life: a family, an opportunity, knowledge, responsibility. Ask yourself, what does this being chosen require from me? And now we look back. This chain started with Adam Alayhissalam. Sheyth Alayhissalam carried it. Idris Alayhissalam advanced it. Noor Alayhissalam continued it. Ibrahim Alayhissalam deepened it. And finally, it was completed with Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, with an unchanging message, with a truth that was not corrupted. The same call echoed through ages. There is one Allah. There is accountability. Be good. Stay away from evil. Prepare for the hereafter. Time changed. Places changed. People changed. But this call never changed. And now, you are a part of this chain. The name of Sheyth Alayhissalam is still remembered after thousands of years, because he did not only live, he passed it on. He did not only know, he taught. He did not only believe, he held firmly. His legacy was not a building, not land, not treasure. His legacy was the love of Allah placed in the hearts of a generation. And that love passed from one heart to another until today, quietly, without being noticed, but never breaking. If you are hearing these words now, you are part of that chain. Do not break it.